Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Planning for Post-COVID-19 Economic and Social Recovery and Planning's Contribution, which is part of the Planner Live Online, the RTPI's Alternative Planning Convention for 2020. My name is Sue Mans, and I'm RTPI President for 2020, and I'll be chairing the webinar. So please do get involved as we go through on Twitter using the hashtag Planning Live Online. And just to note before we start, if you take a look at the handout section on your control panel, you can find links to RTPI work that's related to this session, which can be downloaded in PDF format. If you're watching this session as a recording, the links will be available on our website at rtpi.org.uk/plannerlive. Additionally, we'll be taking questions at the end, but please wait until all the speakers have presented before you submit your questions. Just trying to move the slides on. Right, success. What a week it has been. Having opened Planner Live 2020 with the launch of our campaign, Plan the World We Need, which calls on governments to put planning and planners front and centre of a green recovery, we've been joined at the Planner Live by RTPI members and many others from across the country and beyond, all of whom have had an interest in debating the importance of ensuring a green, fair, place-based recovery. Spatial planning is key to directing the investment in development and infrastructure that was announced by Boris Johnson on Tuesday. And only planners can ensure that the built environment leads the green recovery, one that places a high value on health and well-being and achieves the levelling up that we all want to see. Move this on. Right, struggling a little with the slides here, so I'm just going to have to carry on as they are at the moment. So planners must demonstrate that investment in planning is good economics. And so I'm delighted to announce today that the RTPI has appointed economic consultants Vivid, a very well respected and innovative company, much used to working with government, to provide the evidence through that planning is a cost. We all know the opposite is true. One of the projects coming out of the corporate strategy, and it will aim to show the benefits to the wider economy of investing in planning. We're very much hoping to be able to publish the results of this research in September this year. So this is a unique time in history. It is vital that planners are central to a green, place-based recovery that responds not only to the lessons learned from the pandemic, but also to the challenges that we were grappling with this time last year, most notably climate change. These have not gone away. Today's webinar will explore the contribution that planners and planning can make, identifying the key actions that future generations will most thank us for. So enough from me. I would now like to introduce our speakers who will be discussing today's topic with us. There is Chris Blackburn, MRTPI, who is Planning Policy Team Leader at Preston City Council. Wayne Reynolds, MRTPI, a Director of Atriarc, Planning and Construction. Atriarc were winners of the RTPI Small Consultancy Award of the Year 2020. And also Robyn Skerratt, MRTPI, who is our RTPI Young Planner of the Year 2020. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Sue. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me and I hope you can see the slides on the screen now. It's lovely to be here and thanks for the opportunity to come and speak. As Sue said, my name is Chris Blackburn and I am the Planning Policy Team Leader at Preston City Council. And really, what I want to talk about today in my few minutes is to pose a question, really, as to whether the local plan can really lead change. And I think it's really about we have to look at what we can achieve, not just what we have achieved. And it's clear that there has been significant and in some ways catastrophic impacts on communities, businesses and the environment from the global pandemic that we're currently going through. And we really have to make bold steps to begin to heal that. And I think whilst local plan can't bring around real change on its own, now is the time for us to reimagine and reconsider the role it can play. As Sue just said, in the climate emergency. I mean, from my point of view, measures to simplify the route to get development on the ground, measures which would seem to take local democracy and accountability out of planning, will not serve to deliver zero carbon development. That really is the role of the local plan. The days of pure land use plans are gone. Local plans must deliver local benefits to local people and capture local wealth in the local economy. And we have the opportunity here to use our local plan to collaborate and create a blueprint for our local area, one that indicates ambition, an expectation to meet not just the land-based needs of our communities and businesses. And here in Preston, what we're really focusing on is the community wealth building agenda. And that in its simplest form is focused on building and increasing local value, be it fiscal, social or environmental. Local plans can lead change post-COVID-19. They can mitigate against climate change and they can promote the green economy. They can adapt and they can harness social recovery and they can reduce inequalities and empower communities, but only if they are owned by local people and businesses, and they in turn can see how the local plan benefits them. And finally, from me, it really is an opportunity now to innovate and broaden our horizons. Let's put the words on the page and let's put the lines on the map, but let's get on the front line as well, and let's discuss the potential of land and buildings with owners and investors. And we need to unlock issues that are stopping development from taking place, and we need to use our transferable skills as planners to achieve that. So in summary, I mean, my position is that the local plan can lead change post-COVID-19, but it can't do it on its own. And that's all from me. So I shall now try and pass the baton on to my colleague, Wayne. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. And over to you, Wayne.
Thank you, Chris and Sue. Just waiting for the screen transfer to come through now. Right, so yeah, so hopefully everyone should be able to see my screen now. So good morning, delegates. My name is Wayne Reynolds. I'm the Director of Atriarc Planning and Construction, primarily based in Wales, but working for a few larger clients across England as well. I started my career in the public sector in Cardiff Council, working in development management and city centre strategy before setting the company about 7 years ago. And like Sue mentioned, we recently won the Small Planning Consultancy of the Year award. It's a very interesting topic today, planning for post-pandemic recovery, because planners are key in facilitating cultural, social, environmental and economic recovery. I think the first critical issue is when we're going to be in this post-COVID world. It's a big unknown, but I think as a profession, we've been very flexible in our approach moving forward so far. We've been resilient in shifting to virtual and online working, and I have to commend both the councils across the country and the private sector for sort of having a massive culture change in terms of how we work sort of pretty much overnight. It's something which we've actually used for the past few years now, working with clients who are based abroad. And I think sort of something which is quite nice to reflect on is the rise in home working makes us think about our own living and working environments. Sort of how do we use our homes? And I think we can reflect on that then when we look at planning applications and design in general. So sort of with a shift and change in patterns potentially to far greater home working in the future, how are buildings and cities, towns and suburbs going to function as we move forward? And one of the benefits at the moment is we're embracing technology. We're reducing our own carbon footprint by not travelling to site and so forth. But there's a lot of jobs which can't be done remotely, and we need to pick up now sort of as well sort of the last few months in terms of the backlog of applications, appeals, store development plans and public consultations. We need to hopefully get everything moving again. But one of the key things for me is, post-pandemic recovery, we need properly funded planning departments from central government to support that move and that change. Delays to local development plans, they create delays in the sector, and that has an impact on the economy. And I think it's something which planners in the profession have been discussing over a number of years. So I think now is really the time that it has to change. Looking at some of the short-term sector challenges recently, economically, the housing market has been depressed. What impact this on house prices and land values in the next 6 to 12 months is still a bit up in the air. But certainly from my own perspective, we've seen funding applications where risk matrices have asked for 15 to 30% drop in house price values factored into them. Now, that obviously will significantly impact on the sector, and as such, we could be facing a lot of challenges in the renegotiations on Section 106 affordable housing and so forth. Funding costs have risen, but there is funding still out there, albeit at a higher rate. We've seen some recent changes now to permitted development rights. But personally, as a planner who is very passionate about design, short-term temporary fixes by allowing poor development to come forward is not the way forward. So, our buildings in this country are some of the oldest across the world. Buildings have a shelf life over 100 years. So, we need to be planning properly and investing in the sector to do that. I think in the medium term, we're also going to be seeing obviously the greater rise of challenges within the retail sector, how our cities and towns function. Will we see a shift in property to much bigger preferences for home working and maybe expansion of the suburbs and so forth? So it's something which we've been discussing recently with one of our clients. And a lot of this is a desire to live and work in a better place, and obviously new build is a part of that, but regeneration is also a main factor which we need to consider. So we need to remember basically in that medium term that planners play a vital role in health and well-being, and also ensure homes, public realm are fit for purpose. Because our impact, as a profession, has a massive impact on other areas such as the NHS and health and well-being. And there's a significant opportunity for planners to be proactive in that approach. The long term, 24 months onwards, I think this is where planners, really can show their professionalism and their training and so forth. The shift and change in small macro, microeconomics at the moment. How will our towns and cities change? How is the post-pandemic recovery going to come forward? There's a huge opportunity here for academia and the profession as a whole to really research and investigate people's lifestyles and changes. What demands have they faced, and then bringing that information then back into the policy remit then to really support development moving forward. So yes, I think there's a huge opportunity there really. So things throughout the next few years. There we go. So I've just lost my last slide there now. So but yes, basically, we need to consider to avoid the temptation for quick fixes. We've seen obviously a lot of permitted development rights being discussed in the media recently. But we really need to consider long-term impact on poor quality design and poor quality development going forward. We need to fully resource planning development plans and departments to make sure everything's up to date. And I think certainly from my training and background, improved planner training in urban design. So there's such a knock-on effect really that creating long-term sites and development which can support future generations, not just current generations, is key. And within that, then there's potential for far greater benefit to roll out more supplementary plan guidances and design guides to facilitate development, so we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Okay, that's pretty much me done now, so I'll just change it over to
right. Well, thank you ever so much for that, Wayne. And we're just moving the screen over to Robyn, our RTPI Young Planner of the Year, to take over now. Over to you, Robyn.
Good morning, everybody. What a fantastic honour to be here today. As Sue said, my name is Robyn Skerratt, and I'm attending in my capacity as RTPI Young Planner of the Year, which was awarded to me in April of this year, partly in recognition of some of my work internationally on the Sustainable Development Goals. And what an interesting topic to be here to discuss. What will future generations thank planners for? There's 3 points that I want to make. Firstly, the significance of where we find ourselves now. Secondly, one reflection from some of my work internationally. And finally, and most importantly, why planners have this fantastic and unique transferable skill set to take really proactive action. I'm not sure my slides are moving forward, but I'll continue to talk anyway. The first thing from me is the power of kind of breakpoints. I'm really interested in this concept. It's about kind of a place or time where an interruption or change happens, and planning history is peppered with them. We've got lots of examples from modern urban planning, beginning in Victorian times through public health interventions following disease in overcrowded urban areas, to the current planning system, which a lot of it came and stemmed from the rebuilding after World War II. And for me, there's a few things that really uniquely come together right now. The challenges that we faced over the last 6 months, COVID-19, the wide range of primary and secondary impacts, it's so much more than a health crisis. Secondly, for me, is I think it's really led to a re-evaluation of priorities and what we value, and that was touched on by Wayne as well. I think there's some really interesting emerging research out there. And as Sue touched on in her opening remarks, that the challenge of climate change running in parallel. And a statistic that really jumps out for me that I don't hear that often, at least in where I operate, is around the built environment's contribution to global CO2 emissions is estimated to be 40%, and that's from the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction 2018. And pre-COVID, global floor area was expected to grow at a rate of 1 New York City every month for the next 40 years, which is absolutely phenomenal. So planners and the wider built environment profession clearly have a really pivotal role to play. So looking at the potential of where we find ourselves now, I think COVID is unlike many other crises in that it has effects globally, but they're also felt very locally. And while the effects have definitely not been uniform, I think there's a really powerful opportunity to share learning and ideas as we think together how we want to build a more sustainable world. And for me, an area of real interest and passion is the Sustainable Development Goals. This was an agreed global blueprint for the world that we want to see by 2030. And sustainable development is really at the heart of planning. This year, at the start of January, the UN launched the Decade of Action with 10 years left to achieve the SDGs. And what for me is really powerful is the principle of shared endeavour. Everybody can play a role and must play a role in helping to deliver the SDGs. And I think that's really, really powerful and really resonates with me. I definitely would love to talk at length about the SDGs, but I'm conscious of time. But there is a really great RTPI Learn module, which I would highly recommend. And then the third thing for me is why planners are really well placed. And we have this really unique set of skills and tools in our toolbox. Planning is a very purpose-driven profession. We all have our story and our reason why we became planners. And I think for me that is really, really powerful. And we also have this really unique, like I say, set of skills, thinking about places, taking a place-based approach, thinking about issues collaboratively and with others and bridging lots of different professions, taking an integrated approach and thinking strategically long term, and being really responsive and innovative, which is all fantastic. So I've recapped on where I think there's a unique moment, a little bit about where we can focus some action and thinking, and why planners have this unique skill set, this fantastic toolbox of transferable skills. And for me, there's a really nice quote that sums it up, and why I think we all have a great role to play in taking action individually and collectively. And it's the quote of, if not us, who? And if not now, when? And I think we have a great role to play. So thank you so much, and back to Sue.
Aye, right. Well, thank you ever so much, Robyn. That was really good. Thank you to all our speakers, to Chris and to Wayne as well. And I think that there's one thing that we're all agreed about, and that's that life as we know it or knew it in 2019 will not return. And I think we're also all very much agreed that there is a role for planners and planning front and centre stage as we, to use the words of the RTPI campaign, plan the world we need. And I was very much taken by a quote from Lord Kerslake when he was speaking earlier this week. And he said, as the country begins to emerge from the crisis, it is becoming clear that people want a better future. And he continued, the moment we are in is a challenge to all of us, to governments, businesses, civil society and citizens. But it is a challenge to which together we can rise and build something better. So with growing calls daily for a fairer, greener recovery, the skills and expertise of spatial planners are needed now more than ever, bringing together and balancing competing needs and demands and guiding investment to the right places and ensuring that the recovery works for everyone. Yet at the same time, the planning system is under attack by some. So my opening question to the panel is, what would the panelists say to those who doubt the vital role that planners will play? And how would you persuade them of the need to take a place-based approach to recovery, strengthening planning so that it can play that central role? And if I could possibly start with Chris, if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. It's a good question. And you won't be surprised from my open gambit to say that the local plan has to be key to recovery. It has to be. The only way that wealth and benefits from development can be captured locally and harnessed by those in our community who are most left behind is through the application of local planning policy and local plans. The only way that the climate emergency can be tackled head on and resources placed into the green economy is through the application of local planning policy and local plans. The planners and the plan making system really needs to have the power and status to achieve this. And it has to play a central role. And I just want to mention that earlier this week, my cabinet member and deputy leader of the council, who I think is somewhere out there in the numbers watching us today, sent me on an article which quoted Fiona Howie, the chief executive of the Town and Country Planning Association. You know, I think it struck a chord with me. Now is not the time to remove local communities and opinions from the planning system. That will be divisive and counterproductive, and it will fail to achieve the desired outcomes. It will fail to deliver benefits to those communities that are most left behind, which must be at the heart of any new approach to planning. And I hope that's my sell for the local plan. Thanks, Sue. That's my contribution.
Thank you. Wayne, have you got any views on this from the private sector side?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, Sue. I mean, the old quote sort of fail to plan, plan to fail, I think is a classic one, really, which is more relevant now than any other time it has been, really. So things sort of, you know, developers, the market, funders, they all want certainty that what's coming forward is one, viable, and also sort of two, supported by the local community. And you know, people want to create viable communities. You know, even from the private sector, whilst you know some are more commercially minded compared to you know, some of the ones we work with who are more environmentally and sort of certainly see the value of connecting communities. So you know, it's not just a case that you know we're developing suburban complexes of you know, detached houses and so forth from city centres or from key services such as schools, hospitals, you know, retail premises and so forth. There's a huge raft of development there which needs to be coordinated. So you know, if we don't have a very solid planning system in place, then you know, if it's just a free open market free for all, we'll probably end up with a bit more an American zoning type system, which let's face it, isn't exactly great unless you are working or driving or you know, in a carbon environment and so forth. And certainly, you know, the UK doesn't have the land assets to take that approach. and falling back on certain in terms of the wider environmental and climate change objectives. Then, so there needs to be a system in place to coordinate all that. I think there will be challenges moving forward and so forth, but yes, I think some of the government news coming out at the moment in terms of the permitted development rights again, so things sort of, I think there's a better mechanism really where you can encourage economic development, you can encourage construction and so forth. You might have more flexible national planning policies and so forth, but just to do a blanket approach of relaxing permitted development rights, so basically it does become a free for all. We're not designing or creating communities then which are going to last the long term. So we'll build them, certainly, the market will probably pick it up. But then in 10, 15, 20 years time, we're going to be back in the same situation again as we were with some of the sort of the high-rise developments of the 1960s and 1970s, where there are massive social problems here, and we're just basically delaying a problem from now to later on. So that might be a minor economic benefit. The long-term sustainability of it is going to go out the window. So
thank you very much, Chris. Thank you. Sorry, Wayne. Robyn, this is your future that they're talking about. My perception is that the younger generation, and particularly those who are thinking of going into planning, are perhaps more enthused than ever by wanting to be part of this post-COVID recovery and part of addressing social injustice. But what is your view on that?
I think that's a really good point, Sue. And I remember starting my planning career during the recession, and it was incredibly challenging times, but there was also a lot of opportunity as well to make a real impact. And we find ourselves in that position for very different reasons, but there's a great opportunity here. And something I'm really interested in is the role of kind of planning skills and experience, kind of in beyond sort of conventional realms of planning. Something I found really kind of interesting and rewarding, and I think those planning skills and experiences, that planning toolbox I spoke about, can have real kind of benefits to lots of related disciplines. So whether that's resilience, sustainability, etc. And I think one of the real unique roles of planners is that we bridge and work with and collaborate with a huge range of different organisations and professions, and actually taking our kind of forward thinking on this and sharing that with others and working together to think about how we tackle this shared problem is a really exciting thing, and I think one we can play a really kind of helpful role in. And I guess my other one thought is around, I think it is now a challenging time to join the profession. There's lots of really important role, but it is understandably hard as well. And I think something that I think is incredibly important is the role of kind of mentoring and helping one another and sharing our experiences with other. And I think that kind of the concept of kind of paying it forward has been something I think has been incredibly valuable in my career so far, something that I really want to prioritise, and I think is something we can all do, and we've all got kind of unique skills and experiences to bring and share and learn from one another to tackle this challenge. And I think that's what makes planning and a planning career a really exciting, meaningful one that can drive real change, and links back to that kind of purpose that we all have for joining the profession in the first place.
That's super, thank you very much. And if the young planners that I've met in my role as president are anything to go by, the future of planning is really bright. Now, the next question I'm going to throw out to Chris, if I may, and it's come in from one of the viewers. And the question is, given the need to maintain social physical distancing, is there a medium-term problem of maintaining public involvement in both planning applications and in local planning? Not everyone is familiar with digital working still. Can I give that one to you, Chris, please?
Yeah, thank you, Sue. It's a good question, and I speak fortunately up here in Preston. We plan jointly and strategically with our neighbouring authorities. We have a central Lancashire footprint. And we finished a stage of consultation just before the lockdown started and before it really started kicking in this country. So we kind of just got in there before then. But I mean, going forward, what I am seeing, certainly from the work that I've been doing over the past 3 months or so, certainly with applicants, people interested in continuing to develop and invest in Preston, is really looking innovatively at how they can connect with communities and consult with communities. And I mean, we're all doing that. I mean, if you'd have told me at the beginning of this year that I would take part in Zoom calls and Microsoft Teams calls and meetings left, right and centre, probably I wouldn't even know what you were talking about. But we're all moving forward in that way, and I think there will always be the sector of the community that we can't connect with in that way. But that sector is shrinking all the time, I believe, and we certainly do strive up here in Preston to promote local plan making on all social media platforms electronically as much as we possibly can. But there will always be that challenge of meeting those people in the community, and those are often the most important ones to try to reach. So we have to continue to strive to do that, and there will be challenges with that. But as we're seeing with easing of restrictions coming forward and things starting to open up, then we should be able to push forward with this safely and involve those sectors in the community.
Thank you ever so much, Chris. There's another question that's come in, which is, how can we plan the world we need when many in government do not understand, believe in planning, and we have a failing planning system? Doesn't the RTPI and its individual members need to make a massive effort to mobilise public opinion? And on that one, I'm going to take the chance, if I can, to actually answer that, because what I'd say is that is exactly what Plan the World We Need is about. And what we would really ask members to do, and everyone who's listening, is to share that hashtag and share all the social communications, the reports, and there's a very short 1-minute video that you can share off the RTPI website that really does put planners front and centre stage. And one other thing I'd draw attention to, and just hold up there, it's an open letter that went from Victoria Hills yesterday, and it sets out the need for planning. Please read that, and again, it's an open letter, share it. So it's about all members coming together at this time to really assert the importance of planning in the recovery. Now we've got about 3 minutes left, so if I can ask perhaps each panel member to just give a few there is another question come in, so I'll ask each panel member to comment on this one very quickly. It is, what key skills do the panel think new planners will need to respond to this agenda? What should planning schools be focusing on? Now, if I can actually possibly start with Robyn, and just 1 minute off each because we're coming towards the end, because you're probably closest to your planning education, in the sense of, you've more recently come through that and you've got all the contacts, the young planners routes in there. So perhaps if you can pick out those key skills, and then I'll invite Wayne and then Chris.
This is a really good question, and probably one when I think about this later on, I've got loads of other ideas. But for me, 2 things stand out. One, making sure that kind of core principle of planning being about sustainable development is kind of front and centre, and thinking about the interrelated nature, the economic, social, environmental, and that's something I think is really key and kind of at the heart of the sustainable development goals as well. And I think then the other thing, which is possibly not, is about getting kind of practical experience as well, making sure it's really grounded in the reality we find ourselves now. The world is kind of evolving in different, so making sure that kind of practical approach is built in is going to stand people in really, really good stead.
Thank you, Robyn. So Wayne. Wayne, I think you're on mute still.
That's okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, well, somebody who's, well, myself kind of came quite late to planning, really. So I think sort of completing a master's in Cardiff in 2007, and another master's in urban design in 2010. Yeah, I think sort of, certainly from my experience in terms of the private sector now, sort of having actually a grasp of an understanding of how a building goes together is particularly important, because the knock-on effects of even minor changes for a house extension, or changing the pitch of the roof, how you build it, then the costs can vary quite considerably. When you scale that up to major infrastructure project or major housing development, and you've got everything from the utilities and services and so forth. A background in that experience, I think, is invaluable, really, because you then start to understand, well, urban design principles in general, but also the practical side of development, really. I think sort of other aspects, really, which I alluded to in my opening address, was the benefits of urban design, really. So I think it's very important, and I think even it doesn't have to be a formal qualification, but actually just understanding space. Go out and sit in your garden, sort of see what areas you use, how do you use your lounge, even. Just think of small things, and then you can scale it up. Then, so go to a local park, sit down, enjoy it, see how people use it. So you can see where rubbish bins are located. Is the rubbish located in the right place? It's about sort of those small benefits, really. You can really add a lot of value to development projects. And I think obviously one of the other ones then is just the financial background, really, is getting a better understanding of the finance market itself, not specifically costings for development, but how the funding systems work. Looking at especially all the new funding streams coming forward from crowdfunding, seeder funding, traditional bank lending, joint venture agreements, and so forth. I think having a good grounding in that actually fits you up very well for the public sector or the private sector, because you actually understand then a lot more of the technical background rather than just sort of being faced with the reports landing your desk at some point and not really know what to do with it.
Thank you, Wayne. And final word with Chris.
Okay, well, I'll just answer very quickly from a public sector point of view, to be honest with you, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier on, that I think we need to be innovative and think bold, and the planners of the future will need to accept that the full range and the full spectrum of planning considerations, the importance of social value, and the importance of securing benefits to those in our community that are most left behind. And finally, the second point will be picking up on what Wayne's just said, which I think the planners of the future will continue to get more involved directly in the development industry, and knowing what the fundamentals are which hold back issues that prevent development from taking place, which is a step that perhaps further than just drawing the lines on the map and the words on the page. We need to get onto the front line, as I pointed out before. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you all for those thoughts. So on behalf of all of those who've joined us both live on this webinar and who might be watching it later on catch up, I'd really like to thank you, Chris, Wayne and Robyn, for your contributions for today's discussion. So for those watching, please tell us what you think on Twitter using the hashtag #PlanAliveOnline, and also please complete the survey that follows when this webinar is finished. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/the-RTPI, so that you're notified of all the RTPI's videos as soon as they're released. We've had a lot of content going live this week in particular, and there is still more to come today. A recording of this session will be going up soon, so if you're watching that recording, please leave your comments down below on the screen, because we'd still like to hear your thoughts, and also give this video a thumbs up. So for details of all the events happening for the rest of Planner Live Online this week, which is effectively today, do visit rtpi.org.uk/plannerlive. Thank you to everyone who's listening, and thank you especially to our 3 speakers today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.